constable has confirmed that the warrant for this annual town meeting has been properly posted. The town clerk has informed me there is a quorum present. This annual town meeting of the town of Hamilton is now open. My name is Bill Bowler. I'm the town moderator. Welcome to the April 2, 2022 annual town meeting. Thank you for coming. And may I say, I've never been so glad to see the inside of Perini Auditorium in my life. There will be tellers appointed to help me with counting. And we will start, as we always do, by saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll start with some general reminders. If you are a registered voter in Hamilton, you should have picked up a voting clicker which is like this. If you haven't and wish to vote, then get one in the lobby now. Please turn your cell phone to silent. There's cell service. If you need to take or make a call, please leave the meeting to do so. We welcome non-voters to town meeting, but ask that you sit in the visitors area, which is located in the back left section of the auditorium.
Can you turn on the mic? We can't hear you with the mic. I can't hear a word you're saying.
Missing my deathless prose. Is this better?
No, the microphone.
Hold it closer, Bill.
Is it on now?
No.
This one. I got one.
Okay. I said a lot of good stuff, which I won't repeat, because most of you have been here before. Okay, bringing back vaudeville. Thank you. I'd like to introduce the people who are sitting up in front so you know who they are. We have Tom McEnany, KP Law, Town Council, Corinne Kale, Town Clerk, Joe Demelowitz, Town Manager, Alex McGee, Finance Director, Bill Olson, Select Board Chair, Jamie Knudsen, Select Board Vice Chair, and Darcy Dale, Rosemary Kennedy, and Sean Farrell, members of the Select Board. Christina Schenk-Hargrove, FinCom Chair, John Krulage, Nick Tenson, John McGrath, all members of the FinCom, and Harry Phillip, Associate Member. I've asked non-resident town officials and those assisting the Select Board or Finance Committee to be present here so they may be available to answer questions. Members of the press and video crew have also been allowed to be present. Hopefully you brought your copy of the warrant. There are extra copies in the lobby if you need one. The agenda for the meeting is the warrant. It's prepared by the Select Board. To bring an agenda item before the meeting, I will recognize a member of the sponsoring board, committee, or individual so they can make a motion. If the motion is seconded, I'll recognize the proponent to speak to you about it. Once they're done, I'll open discussion up to you. If you wish to speak, you must first ask me to recognize you. To save time, I ask that you already be standing at one of the microphones, which are at the ends of the two aisles. Once you're recognized, please state your name and street address. You may make comments and ask questions about the motion. You will have 3 minutes. That's 3 minutes to do so. Your comments and questions must be within what we call the 4 corners of the motion. Please do not make comments about any person who is in favor or against the motion, just on the merits of the motion. And please, no applause. All motions to amend must be submitted to the town clerk in writing. If you need assistance in framing a motion to amend, town council will provide you with some assistance. No more than 1 amendment may be pending at the same time. A vote is first taken on the amendment and then on the main motion. When a vote is taken, we'll be using the electronic voting clickers. Joe Demelowitz will demonstrate the use of the clickers in just a moment. In the unlikely event that we have trouble with the new technology, we'll revert to the use of voter cards, and I will ask you to raise your voter cards, and I will then decide visually whether there is the necessary majority or 2/3 vote. If I am in doubt, or 7 voters question the vote immediately after I declare the outcome, I will have the vote counted by the tellers. Joe will now demonstrate the use of the clickers.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, you all have your clicker here in front of you. The buttons you need to pay attention to are 1A or yes, and 2B or no. We're going to ask you a simple question and then give you a couple minutes to vote. You got it up? Okay. The question, what we talked about?
Are we happy to be inside?
Are we happy to be back inside for town meeting? Vote yes or no, please.
Close vote.
Close the vote. So most of you agree with me.
Okay, and I'm told that if you were in the cafeteria, the clickers work from there. If for any reason there's any issue with the reception, you could come into the, allow time for folks to come into the main auditorium to cast their vote. Okay, we will now begin going through the articles in the warrant. Article 1-2, reports. I recognize Bill Olson.
I move that the reports of town officers and committees be received and placed on file. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
So for further discussion, we're going to present brief reports from the Select Board, the FinCom or Finance Committee, and the Master Plan Committee. So good morning, and welcome to our annual town meeting 2022. I actually want to start the meeting with a moment of reflection for those individuals and families around the world that are suffering today. So just take a moment of reflection. I want to thank you all for being here. It is great to be inside and see all your faces. But more importantly, thank you for being part of this great town of Hamilton and being here today to help us make decisions that will strengthen and improve our town. I think the last 2 years have taught each of us many different things, as well as proven how resilient we all are. But the one thing I take away is that during trying times, we may not always agree on every decision, on every issue, but we do have one thing in common: the best interest of our community. So it is important for us to share our thoughts, listen to others, and to build consensus together.
One of the things we've done over the last year as a select board is change our name from Board of Selectmen to Select Board, as it better represents who we are and what we do. And I think our board has proven that although we come from different backgrounds and different motivations, we debate each issue until we find common ground. That has been our success. I want to thank the rest of the select board for their tireless work over the last 2 years to make sure our town has strong leadership and remains in a strong position. I want to thank all the employees of the town and the school district for all the extra effort put in since March of 2022 to make sure none of our services were interrupted. I want to specifically thank Town Manager Joe DeMelowitz, Chief Stevens, and Chief Burnett for their proactive approach to public safety. I want to thank all our town departments, clerk office, boards, committees, which are over 40 of them, and all our volunteers who have put tireless hours into town events, town planning, and town goals. We were one of the safest communities during the pandemic and continue to be a leader in vaccination rollouts. We've done a lot over the last year, most importantly, working to maintain the stability of our government throughout the pandemic. In terms of financials, we have met all our financial and budget goals this year, less than 5 years after we set them. All our reserves and stabilization funds are at their goal. We worked to stabilize our tax rate, and this year are well under the override limits. We've worked to be transparent with the town and with the school committee to challenge all costs and expenditures. We have a strong capital plan and are addressing needs as they happen. We have a new director of finance who will help improve on this work. We've just completed an audit showing no issues and maintaining our AAA bond rating. In terms of revenue, after much planning, we've added over a dozen homes at Canterbury, which paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in new tax revenue this year. And we're working with developers and other new opportunities. We're also about to bring online the new project on Willow Street that will have much needed rental units, senior housing, affordable units, and retail. In terms of town strategy and efficiency and our continued partnership with Wenham and neighboring communities, we've combined the building departments, regionalized health department needs, as well as human resources. We have joined a collaborative to leverage the communities around us in improving our technology infrastructure, amongst other things. And we will continue to further the strategy. We have hired a new COA director, created the Human Rights Committee, and have started to schedule great events at the Patton Estate. In terms of improving our community, we've continued to make strides with green initiatives by maintaining composting, adding solar panels on town properties, retrofitting LED lighting, and aggregating energy costs. We have also recently invested in improvements in our water infrastructure, improvements in Patton Park and the Patton Estate. And we continue to support and sponsor community events with Shop Local and the Community House, including the incredible Fall Festival this year. And in terms of planning, we're working on a great master plan, which we'll talk about as well as part of this report. So I appreciate all the volunteer and all the hard work we've done as a community to make this great town of Hamilton. I'll turn it over to Christina.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. You're going to hear a lot about our opinions all through the meeting today from the Finance and Advisory Committee, so I'm going to keep my remarks fairly general in the introduction. So the Finance and Advisory Committee is established by state law and by the town's bylaws, and the committee's purpose is to consider, quote, any or all municipal questions for the purpose of making reports or recommendations to the town, end quote. So any and all municipal questions for the purpose of making reports or recommendations to the town. I like to say that the only real power we have is to complain, because sometimes we complain loudly for a long time. The committee has five. The committee has five. Okay. The committee has 5 members. The committee has 5 members. The committee has 5 members who are appointed by the town moderator and the select board. We volunteer to review all different kinds of issues that affect the town and make recommendations on those issues. One of our major products each year is our book of recommendations, which is sent to the residents in the mail with the warrant. So our recommendations are in this big book that you have. And before making these recommendations, we spend time participating in the town's budget process, understanding and evaluating every part of the budget. We meet with the school administration and the school committee several times to exchange information about both budgets, the town budget and the school budget. And even for non-budget warrant articles, we do our due diligence too, gathering input from proponents and opponents, and gathering whatever information we feel we need in order to be able to make an educated reach an educated position. All through the year, not just in budget season, but all throughout the year, we monitor various subjects like current and prospective development, the Patton Homestead, the Hamilton Development Corporation. In the past, we've done trash and recycling. We meet every other week, and at a lot of those meetings, we host individuals with knowledge or information about those subjects. And we also attend the meetings of other committees and officials to make sure that we're informed about and involved in whatever issues are before those other committees. I think I do want to pull out one specific item from this past year, and that is the master plan. It was really important to the FinCom that there be some concerted effort to think about the town and where we wanted to go in order to make smart and well-reasoned decisions, and not just take things as they come up. So the master plan is really an effort to do that, to gather from you, the residents, your ideas and wishes and desires and concerns about the town and what you want it to look like in the future, and that will then inform all of our decision-making in the future. So please participate in that master plan process. So in all of these efforts, we are working as guardians of your interest, the public interest, so that if anything is amiss, we can raise the alarm, or we can point it out and bring resources to the issue. I think I speak for all of us when I say that the opportunity to contribute to the welfare of our town is of significant personal value to each of us. And I want to thank you to all of our town volunteers. I want to call out David Wanger, who's not able to be here today. He was quite disappointed that he's not able to be here today. And our associate member, Harry Phillip, who has been diligently coming to meetings and participating, even though he doesn't have an official position yet. So thank you to those two, and to all of the other town volunteers, the town employees, the elected officials, and thank you to all of you for being here today.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Rosie Kennedy. I'm a member of the Master Plan Steering Committee, and just want to give you a brief introduction to what we're doing. And then I'll have Jack Lawrence, who's the chair of the Master Plan Steering Committee, come up and say a few things as well. So the first question is, what is a master plan? It's a long-term planning document. Our last one was in 2004, so it certainly is time to think about what the next direction for our town is. Our master plan is also an aspirational roadmap of goals used to focus development of our town. The components of a master plan are, first of all, it looks at existing conditions, including jobs, housing, demographics, facilities, schools, and transportation. And then it asks residents, through a series of community engagement events, what do you want to protect and how do you want to grow? Next, based upon those two sets of information, we develop goals for the town. And then, of course, a plan to meet those goals. And in the end, we have a vision that promotes desirable development on a scale compatible with our community values. And now I'll have Jack Lawrence, who's the chair of the Master Plan Steering Committee, tell us a little bit more. Jack?
Good morning, my name is Jack Lawrence, 105 Rock Maple Avenue. I am the chair. The vice chair unfortunately went into quarantine with COVID yesterday, but the Master Plan Committee is alive and well and functioning. I see there's only about 81 people here. That's a very small microcosm of the town. The master plan needs to reflect what people think this town should go, and things are going to change over the next 20 years. We're talking about a 20-year horizon, and the last master plan started in 2004. We had a bunch of overrides. We're going to have a whole bunch more overrides coming up. Business as usual is not going to serve us well over the next 20 years. We're going to have to start getting creative. We're going to have to do something different. And we want to hear from every one of you. Speak to your friends and neighbors. tell them that there is a website, HamiltonMasterPlan, all one word.com. We want to hear from you. We want you to know what we're talking about, and we want you to be very much a part of the process. This is your town. We need to maintain the quality of life in this town that we all came here for and love, but things are going to change. So how do we maintain that balance? We've got to maintain the balance in order to keep the quality of life as we all want it. And I can't overemphasize the importance of participation. We meet the second Thursday and the fourth Thursday, or we are now second Thursday, fourth Thursday of each month. They're open meetings. We are meeting in the memorial room. We also have Zoom contact so that you can watch it that way. And please join us, participate. We want your thoughts. We may not use them all, but we want them. Just remember, it's wide open. Things are going to change. You've got to change the right way. We've got a balance to maintain. Thank you very much.
Jack, you want to mention the
Yeah,
survey?
the survey,
Mention the survey.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. You know, in the back of your warrant, there is a survey, 2 pages. We've got a whole bunch more at the table outside the door, and there will be somebody there after the meeting, during the meeting, after the meeting. If you can turn them in today, it would be great. If not, bring them to the town clerk's office. The more they get filled out, the more we'll know what the hell everybody wants.
Is that it for reports?
That's all the reports.
Okay. Is there any questions or discussion? If not, then we'll move to a vote accepting the reports. So you have your clickers now. All those in favor of, well, you can vote on accepting the reports. We'll open the voting now. We'll close the voting. Unanimously, the reports are accepted. And I so declare. Okay, Article 1-3, Articles for Consent Motion, to see if the town will consolidate in one consent motion containing the motions for those articles that, in the opinion of the moderator, are not controversial and can be passed without debate, or take any action thereon or relative thereto. I will now read the list of articles to be taken up and voted on as one motion. If you want to ask questions or make comments on an article, shout out "hold" as the list is read. Any article that is held will be deleted from the consent motion and taken up and considered according to its place on the warrant. Article 2-1, Article 2-5, Article 2-6. Hold on Article 2-6. Article 2-7. Article 2-8. Article 2-14. I recognize Bill Olson.
I move that the articles included on the list of articles for consent motion for this 2022 annual town meeting, a copy of which has been delivered to the town clerk to be filed with the minutes of this meeting, be approved by one vote. Each motion to be deemed a separate action under the warrant article, having the same corresponding number, except Article 2-6. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Okay. This is... Okay. We'll now vote on the consent articles, which, to repeat, are Articles 2-1, 2-5, 2-7, 2-8, and 2-14. I'll open the voting. Voting is now closed. The article passes 104 to 4, and I so declare. Article 2-2, prior year bills. This will require a 4/5 vote. I recognize Christina Schenk-Cargrove.
I move that the town raise and appropriate $9,218.80 to pay unpaid bills from Northeast Electrical and DeRosa Environmental for the electrical project at Patton Homestead and environmental survey work at the landfill in the amounts of $1,718.80 and $7,500 respectively. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
So these are two bills that, for one reason or another were correctly incurred and are correct bills, but they came in subsequent to the deadline for getting into the past year, and so we just have to take a vote in order to pay those.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Again, this requires a 4/5 vote. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. The article passes, and I so declare. Article 2-3, General Town Departmental Appropriations. This is our annual General Town and School Omnibus Appropriation article. I recognize Eric Tracy, Superintendent of Schools, to report on the school district budget.
Thank you, Mr. Bowler. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to address the citizens of Hamilton.
Excuse me, and I beg everyone's pardon here, but I was informed that our state representative, Jamie Belcedo, is here, and she'd like to come forward and introduce herself.
She said she's okay.
Okay? Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Slipped my mind. Mr. Tracy.
Thank you. I'd be remiss if I did not thank our families, our students, our educators and administrators for the work they have done to get us back into school and to keep us in school. Also, I'd like to thank our Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Mr. Vinnie Leone, who has been masterful during the development of the budget this year. I'd also like to thank the school committee, town manager, select board, finance board, and many others who have had a hand in working to present a fiscally responsible budget to you today. As you know, I have been superintendent for 6 short months, and I'm proud of the way all of our boards came together on multiple occasions to keep our vision shared and our work transparent. Switch slides. Thank you. This slide is a partial representation of the handout you received today. It represents the budget for FY23 school year and an important investment towards the future on behalf of our children, which I will outline a little more clearly in a few moments. You will notice the assessment to the town of Hamilton is $22,213,519. As you may remember, the FY21 budget was reduced by the school committee by approximately $1.24 million because there was information received from the state that our state appropriations would be cut by our state aid would be cut by 20%. Looking back, over 22 positions and a number of programs were cut to this anticipated decrease. This year, and actually last year as well, we were able to make some gains to recover some of those losses. This list represents some of those changes and gains on behalf of our students at the beginning for this FY23 budget. Fiscal year 21 ended with a surplus of approximately $3.1 million. Due to COVID, we were out of school more than we were in school, and the usual supplies and goods used daily in schools were not purchased. There were also a number of positions that we were not able to fill during that time due to COVID-19, and also the unexpected increase of Chapter 70 state aid. Through the years, there's been a push for the school district to open and fund our other post-employment benefits, or OPEB account. An OPEB account is an investment account that in time can be used to offset payments for benefits for retirees. Because the OPEB account does not exist on the school side, these expenses are currently paid out of the operating budget. What's important to note is our future liability is in excess of $40 million. We propose using approximately $2 million in excess funds to fund the OPEB investment account and begin to build a tool for our children to offset the future of OPEB-related costs. We also propose to utilize approximately $325,000 to make some much-needed repairs around our schools, including some required ADA updates. As you can see on this slide, $775,000 of the original $3.1 million will be returned to the towns. This is the FY23 gross summary broken down by the required Mass Department of Education categories, not including debt expenses, that totals $42,859,392. There are currently 4 projects that represent approved debt in the towns in the amount of $571,960, of which Hamilton's portion is $373,885. We have worked to present a budget to our towns that meet the needs of our children while also staying under previous increases. As you can see, the overall assessment for Hamilton is an increase of 3.31% over last year, mostly due to an increase in the number of students attending schools they call the shift from Hamilton to Wenham compared to last year. I am proud to represent the students, families, and staff and faculty of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District. We have been successful in the last 6 months at stabilizing our district, and I believe we're well on the way to developing stronger schools and improving our school facilities. As you may know, we've been invited into the process to build a new Cutler Elementary School by the Mass School Building Authority. We also have an Athletics Facilities Improvement Committee that is working regularly to find ways to fund much-needed improvements in our athletic fields and facilities. These projects will need all of our support and work over the next few years. I look forward to working with everyone in this community and Wenham to make our schools amazing. Thank you to the citizens of Hamilton for the opportunity to present the FY23 school budget today.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. I recognize Joe Demolowitz, Town Manager, to report on the town budget.
Good morning. Thank you. With me, I have Alex McGee, our new Finance Director. We're just going to go through a couple of slides really briefly to hit the high points of our budget for this year. And it's up. Great. You'll notice that the fiscal year 2023 budget represents in total $36,435,101 for both the town and schools. This is an increase of about $1.1 million over the last year. Town costs increased by about 2.98% due to raises for staff, but also to things beyond our control, debt service, unclassified expenses like insurance, those types of issues. That's all in the budget. Next slide. The breakdown of our budget is up here for you to see, but we have $2.29 million for general town government, $3.5 million for public safety, $22.2 million for the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District, $316,000 for the Essex North Shore Aggie, $2.249 million for public works, $338,000 for health and human services. This includes the health department and the council of aging, and $1 million for culture and recreation. As I said, $4.4 million of our budget is for insurance, debt service, unemployment costs, things like that. Alex?
All right, so this is just a visualization of the numbers that Joe just talked about. You'll see the light blue square is our unclassified expenses. So $4.43 million, like Joe mentioned, this is expenses that don't really live within a department, but they are nonetheless very important to the town, and so they live in their own category. The large wedge at the bottom is for education. This is combined for the Regional School District and the Essex North Shore Technical School District. Working our way to the darker blue wedge, this is general government. It's $2.29 million, representing about 6.5% of the total spending. Red is public safety. This contains your police, fire, ECO expenses. It's just over $3.5 million. The green wedge is public works, $2.249 million. The small sliver is health and human services, and then the next blue wedge is culture and recreation, just over $1 million. This slide represents sort of where we've been the last couple of years. The blue column is the requests for this year, and then you'll see the sort of the dollar change and the percent change on the right. This just gives a breakdown of sort of where changes are happening. We're probably calling out, there's a $157,000 increase in general government. You can think of that as all of your town hall departments. Public safety held the line really well. There's only a $52,000 increase, which is 1.5%. Public works, noticing increased need in public works and the cost of goods and services going up pretty dramatically. There's a $170,000 increase there. Health and human services, almost $12,000 increase. Culture and recreation, about a $50,000 increase there. Some of that comes from some small capital projects that are outside of the capital plan that are being done. Schools, a $742,000 total increase. That includes both school districts. And then unclassifieds, we had some unexpected savings due to, while we had health insurance costs go up, we had a few people come off of insurance, and so our overall cost of the town is going to go down on that. That represents our total.
So you had a quick high-level look at the general categories we fund in our budget. This slide shows you how we fund the budget. And our revenues, you'll see the very large Pac-Man-shaped blue circle is property tax levy. The town of Hamilton gets nearly 90% of its revenues from local property taxes. If you also add in local receipts and the water enterprise budget, you're getting close to 98% of all the money that we spend in town comes from local taxpayer. We only get 2.64% from the state aid, and then less than 1% in other financing sources.
Sure. This is the same. This shows sort of the changes in revenues. We're projecting an increase in taxes, the total tax levy raised of $842,000. This falls below the 2.5%, the Prop 2.5 number that we need to hit. An increase in $58,000 from state aid. This is still a preliminary number. The budgets coming out of the State House are not finalized yet. The governor's budget contains a larger increase than this, so we'll see what happens with that. Local receipts, we are projecting an increase of about $100,000 in this, mostly tied to motor vehicle excise. Other funding sources, so this is some sort of kind of unclassified revenue source as well. This is just a moderate increase of $5,000. Free cash usage, we're projecting a $580,000 usage of free cash this year. And allowance for abatement, this is a budgeted number that we budget for tax revenue that we project will not go collected during the fiscal year. We budget it to offset that so we don't put ourselves into a structural hole. Next slide.
So the next slide shows our excess levy capacity. You'll see that for a number of years, back in 2018, we had nearly $3 million under the levy capacity. That's the maximum amount that we could raise through taxation under Proposition 2.5. For the last several years, it's been dropping to the point where the current year budget, FY22, had just about $100,000 in excess levy capacity. We've been very fortunate this year due to some good budgeting, some really smart use of our budgets. We've been able to avoid the continued downward of that, and we're actually in the proposed budget, we're going to regain about $400,000. That means we won't be taxing as close to the max as we have been the last couple of years. That's very good news for us. It gives us a buffer in the future to help us hopefully avoid Proposition 2.5 overrides. So we're excited about that. This is the spot where you can ask questions.
Yeah. I recognize, so,
You need to finish reading the motion. Do I read it? No. Yeah.
yeah, okay. I'll now read each appropriation, and for any item the voter would like to discuss separately, please shout out hold. $2,296,762.72 for general town government. $3,502,800.27 for public safety. $22,213,591 for Hamilton Wenham Regional School District. $316,612 for Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical School District. $2,249,675.94 for Department of Public Works. $338,470 for Health and Human Services. $1,082,247.12 for Culture and Recreation. That's a hold on culture and recreation. $3,609,036.57 for unclassified, totaling $35,609,196. I recognize John Perlich, the FinCom.
I move that the town raise and appropriate the sums read by the moderator for schools and other town expenses, which are set forth in the 2023 fiscal year budget in Appendix B of the 2022 appendix book and Appendix C of the 2022 appendix book, with the corrections read by the moderator, accepting those items held.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Good morning, everyone. The FinCom commentary that came with the warrant goes into detail, in fact, a lot of detail in the budget, and why FinCom unanimously supports the proposed budget. Won't try and completely rehash those details, but here are a few of the items we'd like to highlight. The overall budget increased by about 3.2% from last year. On the town side, the increase was about 3%, driven by personnel expenses, which account for 60% of the budget and grew at a rate of almost 4%. As detailed by Alex and our town manager, other operational costs also grew at a higher rate due to certain unavoidable expenses, such as increased election and audit requirements, as well as DPW work. These were offset by a reduction in financial reserve transfers, which were relatively minimal this year because we have such stable reserve levels. So if you net these reserve transfers out, the true operational costs of the town grew at a rate closer to 3.4%. On the school side, the assessment increased about 3.3%. But there's some nuances to the school budget that bear pointing out. As Superintendent Tracy detailed in his report, almost half of this assessment is due to a shift in enrollment between Hamilton and Wenham. Enrollment has continued to dramatically shift towards Hamilton, and that affects our budget. It's not clear whether this is just cyclical and will shift back towards Wenham, like it did for a number of years last decade, or if the current proportion is a new normal, so to speak. But it certainly bears watching for future budgets. Second, as Superintendent Tracy recognized, $3.1 million of the school budget is funded by excess and deficiency funds from the overfunded budget 2 years ago. To the school's credit, the $2 million of that $3.1 million is being used to make a significant contribution to OPEB. This has only been recently begun to be funded and is a $56 million liability that the two towns are ultimately on the hook for. Making this investment is very important. This $2 million will grow over time, and some estimates are that this will save the towns almost $10 million over time. This is very significant, and FinCom applauds this move by the school district. However, a good chunk of the remaining E&D funds, the $775,000, as required, are returned to the towns and effectively reduce this year's assessment. While this is great for this year's budget and the tax rate, since these funds can't be relied on year to year, it does actually mask the actual operational spending rate that will likely occur in future years for the district. The real operational spending for the schools increased at a rate of almost 4%, which was similar to last year's growth rate. I note that these true operational spending growth rates for the town and school because they're very important when you look at future years. On one hand, when you look at this budget, in very challenging times, this is a fiscally responsible budget. Both the town and the school spendings are controlled, and our tax rate is only expected to increase by about 10%. There's no override, and as mentioned, we slightly did increase our excess levy capacity, which was almost at zero. But just as a word of caution, we still fundamentally grew at operational spending rates that were above 2.5%. And spending consistently above these type of growth rates will lead to much higher tax rates and Prop 2.5 overrides, unless there is additional revenue to offset it, which, as you know, comes almost entirely from real estate taxes. FinCom has developed a scenario modeling tool that notes a very real possibility of higher tax rates and overrides in the near term. And this is almost a certainty if there's an economic downturn. But we are certainly encouraged by two things. First, the tireless work done by our town manager and all department heads to control spending and be flexible in the budget process. This should really be commended. And second, the high level of collaboration between the town and the school district during the budget process, which has really increased in the last few years. This was highlighted this year by the district making several additional budget reductions at the request of the town, even though the assessment was already going to come in lower the rate than prior years. We're going to continue to face difficult decisions and trade-offs, and so it's important that we work together to find creative and efficient solutions in our budgeting. We need to stretch the dollars provided by the taxpayers as far as possible. And for these reasons, FinCom unanimously supports adoption of this budget article. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to discussion. We'll discuss the held item first, which was culture and recreation.
Here Cookson, 318 Bond Street. My question about this item is, I'd like to know how the money is split up for what? It's well over $1 million. I'd like to know that. Okay, just information.
Yeah, I recognize Alex McGee.
If I may, this, the culture and recreation line item is broken between two departments of the town. First being the library and the second being recreation. These are both shared departments with Wenham. How the library works is, Wenham is what's called the lead town on the library. There's a split in the funding with that. 50% of it is driven by the total value of the two towns, so all real property, and then 50% of it is driven by population. There's a 3-year look back. They take the average of those numbers, and then that produces a ratio which is applied to each town. So for 2023, the library's the total funding for the library for Hamilton is $908,347. And then for recreation, there's a similar apportionment, and that is $173,900. So that's where that's what makes up that total of $1,082,247.
Do you release your hold, ma'am? Are there any further discussions or questions about the?
I released my hold.
Thank you. Are there any further discussions about the budget?
Lynette Fallon, 38 Goodhue. I just want to thank the FinCom for your excellent report. I've been looking for something like this for years, and I know it takes a lot of work to put that together. And the written report is excellent. I read it this morning, and your report today at the meeting as well. And I'd also like to thank the town for your use of pie charts and other explanatory material, which we haven't had in the past. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, then I think we're ready to move to a vote on the general town budget, which includes, I'll quickly reread just the totals. $2,296,762.72 for general town government, $3,502,800.27 for public safety, $22,213,591 for Hamilton Wenham Regional School District, $316,612 for Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical School, $2,249,675.94 for Department of Public Works, $338,470 for Health and Human Services, $1,082,247.12 for Culture and Recreation, $3,609,036.57 for unclassified, totaling $35,609,196. This is a majority vote. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. Get the total up there. The article passes, I so declare. I recognize Jamie Belcito, State Representative.
Thank you very much for the time. I'll keep my remarks based relative to the budget here, and just want to acknowledge the tried and true town meeting process and how integral it is to our towns. And thank you for having me here this morning. I would like to thank Mr. Moderator for giving me the opportunity to say some words. I would like to thank FinCom. I think you're receiving all of $1 to do this, maybe not. Even that, and the same goes for the Select Board. This is hard work, and it was always hard work. And these folks are doing this to make sure that your dollars stretch as much as possible in light of a global pandemic. And I want to say hats off to that. I'd like to say thank you to my dear friend Corinne, our phenomenal town clerk, who I have the honor and privilege of working with, and the same goes with the town moderator, with the fabulous Polish name that I'm going to butcher, and I apologize in advance, Mr. Domolovitz. I say it a little differently. I say it like with an Italian. It's like Domolovitz, you know, but that's Domolovitz. Thank you. I just want to say how fortunate I am as the representative of the 4th Essex District to work with these phenomenal people who had your best interests in mind. And that also goes for the esteemed school committee members who have done everything during this time to make sure that our children are safe. And I'd like to say thank you. Another incredibly integral part of this community is your Department of Health. I ran into your nurse yesterday, Nurse Rachel, and I have to say I teared up. I expressed to the Board of Health, the nurse, her staff, and the community members that came out during the darkest of days to start to administer our vaccine, that it was the first time that I felt that I personally saw the light at the end of the tunnel. And it started here in this community, at that community center. And so hats off to everyone who made that happen. Because here we are in this room today. I must be honest, I was ready to go put my sneakers on and get out in the field. And then I realized it was indoors. So we've come a long way. So thank you very much for your leadership in your community in making that happen. I wanted to hit some points in regards to your budget to the state, to the Fed. We're in a very unique opportunity for something we've never seen before, and that's something called cash flow. Okay. I'm honored and privileged to be at the intersection of something that so drastically turned the financial faucet on for this country. It should never be that way, but fortunately we're in a position where we are focused on infrastructure, education, healthcare, and supporting our municipalities, because this is the heart of every single one of our communities. It doesn't run without you. ARPA funds are going to be coming up for discussion again at the State House. Are we going to spend every dime willy-nilly? Absolutely not, but we are tasked to extinguish these funds by a certain point, and I will continue to work. I always go to Joe. I let them beat Joe up behind the scenes. But I say that with tongue-in-cheek, because what's happening is we're taking a look at water infrastructure. How do we partner with our federal dollars? How do we get ready for major projects? The Senator and I, Senator Bruce Tarr and I, how do we continue to move forward on our water infrastructure, our water resources, the Ipswich River? How do we address big ticket items that are affecting our everyday communities? Because I too am a taxpayer. I thank the border crossing agents at the Topsfield-Hamilton border crossing that let me here this morning. I say that also jokingly because I'm also a taxpayer in a different community, and we cannot continue to put that burden on the backs of all of us. We should be able to partner with our federal government and our state legislature to make sure that we're uplifting and keeping our communities safe, and part of that is access to clean water and safe water, and we are doing exactly that. For the schools, I stepped up to say our districts need as much representation as those in the larger cities. The Student Opportunity Act is finally being rolled out. We're going to see where that falls. I am now officially part of the Rural School Caucus because I'm at least representing 4 regional school systems in our 6 towns. That's a lot. I'm happy to say, and I think we'll see more exact figures in the next coming weeks, that we will be funding the regional transportation at 90 to 95%. It should have always been 100. So I'm here and happy to offer 90 to 95%. We'll see where that goes. I did get in front of House Ways and Means Chair. He's the man with the money. And I worked with Joe to put forth the budget request for this town. And we will see what those final budgets are the week after April vacation, okay? I want to speak to my esteemed town clerk, staff over here to say the updated election rules, changes in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are currently in conference committee, and we cannot ask for our town clerks across the 351 Commonwealth municipalities, cities, towns to do more with less. And so part of that ask is going to be monies, of which I heard was spoken to over here. And that's something I've been verbal about from the get-go. Okay, so let's see where that goes on that. I had a few more issues here, again, relative to this discussion. My office is researching the special education circuit breaker. I know that that's a very big issue for many parents here. I ask you reach out to me if you have additional points around that. Hats off to those who made the Cutler School application a reality. It takes very long to get there, and we're finally here. I look to elevate this town. I look to be a voice of the many 160 legislators there, but I think that you have a unique opportunity with the minority leader as your senator and myself, and the goodwill that I've been able to bring to this position, to know that you are adequately and fiercely represented in the halls, and let us continue to go after what's available. I will make sure that we research every avenue to take the financial burden off of this town, and I ask that you feel free to reach out to me, and I thank you very much for being able to say some words here today, and I'm very lucky to support you. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Representative. Article 2-4, capital expenditures. I recognize Rosemary Kennedy to report on this article.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $550,905 from free cash to fund the purchases and projects identified in the fiscal year 2023 capital projects plan, with the exception of the Patton Park master plan, which will be funded in a separate article. The capital projects plan is set forth in Appendix D of the 2022 appendix book. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Discussion. I believe Nick Kempson of the FinCom.
Good morning. Talking about the capital expenditures, one of the things I want to recognize right off the bat is that we have a capital committee that has been working hard over the last 2 years. It's fairly new to us, but it has been an integral part of what we do. They do a great job of scrutinizing the capital requests, itemizing them. I really encourage you to take a look at Appendix D, because it shows you not only this year's expenditures, but what is anticipated in the future. And again, they're looking closely at what is important for us as we go through this. The 550,000 ask in this case is really in 6 buckets. It really boils down to roads and sidewalks for 150,000. DPW garage, which we talked about, is in dire need, and it needs about $225,000. There's a GSA management system. That's a software system which will allow us to manage keep track of our infrastructure inventory of pumps, valves, those types of things, but it actually goes beyond that and can be used for all other assets like that in the town. The big part is also the library IT, actually has $27,000. There's a patrol car. The patrol car is $57,000, but that is actually something we do each year, so we don't back it up and spread out over many years. And finally, we have an EOC repeaters, which is used. It's really an upgrade in our technology for emergency broadcasting, and that is $28,000. So that's actually where all of this comes from, and it's our position that these are one needed. Again, brought to us by the Capital Committee. But the funding of it is very important, and we believe that what we should do is fund this through the free cash. We're fortunate at this moment to have free cash of over $4 million, it's $4.1 million. And it is a good, and so using that instead of going out and funding it through debt. The other thing is that it prevents, or it helps us avoid going into Prop 2.5. This is another piece of us. We just saw up there recently, it was said 300,000 roughly that we were at a break point. This, by using free cash, it allows us to stay away from that 300,000 and keeps us a cushion. So overall, the Finance Committee has favorably endorses this, not only this amount of budgeting for capital budgets, but also the funding source.
Any questions or discussion?
Just quickly, Mark Johnson, 6 Patton Drive. Thank you. Looks great. In the past, we've had a road plan, a road maintenance plan that we've worked through, and every year we'd say we're planning the 7th of the 11th year plan, or that the 8th year. So it's very predictable as we looked at maintaining all of our roads in bulk, repaving and so on. We haven't had that for a couple of years, and I'm just throwing out that sometime soon we may want to start rolling that long-term plan in again. We have a small amount in the highways on the capital piece, but it's not to the same scale and scope that would cover all 90 miles of the town roads. So I just want to throw out the idea that it would be nice to do it in that planned way. It seems appropriate to do it within this capital plan and within the capital group.
Hello, Chris Fellows, 184 Woodland Mead. Could you just say a few words about the town hall construction? Item F8, as it seems to be the largest item on the.
So as of right now, that's showing up as an FY24 project. As town meeting knows, the town meeting supported an effort to make renovations to town hall and rehabilitate the building. It's over 100 years old. We've got it through town meeting several times, but we have not been able to get the financing piece together with the will of the voters. That is not before voters this year. The select board will be making a determination at some point here in the next few months as to when and whether to bring that back. It's likely to come up probably later this year for FY24 or beyond. But that would be, we have some funding, that financing in place through the Community Preservation Committee, and then we'd be looking for the balance to be funded in other ways.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
I'd just like to make a comment that I'm very grateful to the Capital Committee who has come together and spent the better part of a year really prioritizing all the needs of this town. It is very comforting to know that we are developing a long-term plan for financial stability. So I thank the Capital Committee and I also thank the Finance Committee for their hard efforts.
Further discussion or questions? If not, then we'll move to a vote. This requires a majority vote. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. The article passes, and I so declare. Article 2-6, Annual Financial Actions. I recognize Christina Shankar-Grove.
I move that the town authorize the following financial transfers. Transfer $2,000 from the cemetery sale of lots and graves fund to the general fund to be used for cemetery purposes. Transfer $447,893 from the water enterprise fund to the general fund to be used for indirect expenses, and transfer $108 from the park property fund to the conservation trust fund. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Hargrove?
Yep, I can say a couple words about this. So the $2,000 is transferred from the cemetery sale of lots and graves fund to the general fund as an offset to help repay the cemetery expenditures that come from the general fund. So work that is performed by the town in the cemetery. So the cemetery money that comes into the cemetery is then used to pay back the town for those expenses. That's my plain language explanation of that. $447,893 transferred from the water enterprise fund to the general fund. Similarly, these to offset indirect costs, for example, the time spent by town employees when bills are paid for the water department or collecting water payments or other administrative or other work, that sort of thing. And then the $108 is in a trust fund, and the terms of that trust are that the interest be transferred to the conservation fund annually. I guess I would just add that these transfers effectively reimburse the town's general fund, and the net effect of the transfers is to reduce the tax rate for the citizens. So because the money is transferred from a fund to off, it reduces the amount that we have to increase the taxes.
Discussion?
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Patty Miller, 8 Maple Avenue. And part of my question was answered through your explanation, so I thank you for that. And I was noticing that the water enterprise budget was the earnings from that were left over from last year, hoping to balance that budget for this year, so I appreciate that. And I was wondering why there was going to be a transfer of funds to the general budget when I believe the water enterprise funds are to be used for water purposes, with the infrastructure fees and so forth. But your answer saying that some of the money was going to be used for bills for the water and have the employees that work for the water department helps, is that how
all that $487,000 is going to be used?
If I may, so the Water Enterprise Fund is maintained as a separate, its own separate fund from the general fund, right? And so, and it's roughly a $2 million annual operation, the water department. That includes, the delivery of water's service to all, anyone who's connected to our water system. And so, as part of that, there is a large administrative effort as well as a sort of an operational effort. And so this $447,000, we call it indirect costs. This is, in the municipal finance world, this is an indirect cost allocation that offsets all of the time that various people in a number of other different departments around town hall to offset the effort used to continue the function of the water enterprise. So we pay direct salaries directly out of the water enterprise for a number of water employees. And this amount here offsets the other efforts for the sort of the whole world of other employees that are not funded out of the water enterprise.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, we can move to a vote. This requires a majority vote. This is regarding the annual financial actions. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. The article passes, and I so declare. Article 2-9, Patton Homestead Operating Budget. I recognize Sean Farrell.
Good morning, everyone. I'll do my 7th-inning stretch here. I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 to defray the expenses of the Patton Homestead for fiscal year 2023 and further to approve the FY 2023 Patton Homestead Enterprise Fund budget as set forth in Appendix F to the 2022 Appendix Book. Is there a second?
Second. Mr. Farrell.
I'd like to recognize John McGrath from the FinCom, Mr. Moderator, to speak to this.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, everybody. The Patton Homestead has been a Hamilton asset since the gift in 2012. In previous town meetings, the FinCom has voted unanimously to provide for ongoing operating costs of the Patton Homestead, which included hiring a director. These recommendations, as are noted in the warrant write-up, were not without qualifications. Quite simply, the gift was very generous to the town, but it does require us to keep the property functioning. We actually have some tenants in there who are paying the town. But the FinCom back in 2020 really was looking to challenge the town to make the property self-sufficient. So while it's a great asset to the town and is being used, the FinCom did feel that a plan should be put in place, deeper understanding of the potential of the property, and to achieve self-sufficiency, which would negate the need for the general fund to continue funding the operation. As you know, in the last couple of years, all our lives, lives, as well as the Patton Homestead, was disrupted quite significantly. Usage was down considerably. This year, though, recognizing what's happened in the last couple of years, we formed a study group to review the operation, review the potential of the property, identify some metrics that we could sort of measure the operation of the property, and then come back to the select board, to the FinCom, with some recommendations. So the study group has now met a couple times, and we do plan to come in with a series of recommendations or options. What could we or should we do with the property? So we'll be doing that during the calendar year. And I do urge voters, if they're interested in learning more about what's going on at the Patton Homestead, certainly watch our agendas, because the FinCom and the Select Board will be discussing Patton. So, but the FinCom does recommend favorably the action to fund the $75,000 from the FY23 budget. Thanks.
Any questions or discussion? If not, we can move to a vote. This requires a majority vote. This is for the Patton Homestead. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. The article passes, and I so declare. Article 2-10, Stabilization Fund. This will require a 2/3 vote. I recognize Nick Tenson.
I move that the town transfer a sum of $20,000 from free cash to the stabilization fund.
Is there a second? Discussion?
Just a general information on this. This is first of all, the stabilization fund was established to really be a backup in case of an emergency. We voted as a town that we would have 5% of our budget put into that stabilization fund. We've done an excellent job in funding that over the years. It just so happens that this year, based on the funding, we are $20,000 short of the budget this year. This $20,000 will bring us up to that a little over 5%. And we recommend that it be done out of free cash to avoid going again into we have the cash to do it, and it's the right place to do it. This will require a 2/3 vote. So and I say that because it requires that for the money to go in. It also requires it for that money to come out. So it's a very stable fund, not something that can be used willy-nilly. And FinCom recommends this strongly.
Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we can move to a vote. Again, this requires a 2/3 vote. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. The article passes by the required 2/3, and I so declare. Article 2-11, Community Preservation Budget. I recognize Jay Butler.
I move that the town approve Article 2-11 as printed in the warrant.
Is there a second?
This article is a combination of internal administrative actions, if you will. They're detailed in Appendix G. 4 of them are simply transfers within sub-accounts of the global CPA account that the town finance department manages. We have to put 10% of our revenues each year into community housing, open space and recreation, historic preservation, and then 5% into administrative. Everything else goes into this unreserved account. So 4 of the actions under this article are doing that. The 5th article under this is the requirement to pay our annual bond repayment for the Sagamore Hill, also known as the John Day Donovan Recreation Area. We opened up a $1.25 million bond in FY16. This year's bond repayment is $107,200. This bond will be paid off in 2032. Questions?
Questions or discussion? Was there a recommendation from the Community Preservation Committee?
It was unanimous, as was the recommendation of the FinCom and the Select Board.
Thank you. Again, any further discussion or questions? If not, we can move to a vote. This requires a majority vote. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. The article passes, and I so declare. Article 2-12, Community Preservation, Patton Park Master Plan. I recognize Jay Butler.
I move that the town approve Article 2-12 as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Butler?
Yes. It's easier just for me to read from the application that was made. This is a grant request, a joint request from the Department of Public Works and the Hamilton-Wenham Recreation Department. So I'll read from their application, it's easier. Over the last several years, the Department of Public Works and the Recreation Department has received numerous requests for improvements to Patton Park. These requests range from benches, picnic tables, to trees, to walkways, field improvements, and building upgrades or replacements. Requests have come in from residents, town committees, and users of the playing fields. This funding request will allow the town to procure a landscape architect for design services to develop a master plan for Patton Park. The hired landscape architect and town departments would lead public forums and collaborative events to understand the current use of the park and to hear specific requests to develop a master plan. This plan would include the park's current infrastructure and plants, as well as future park improvements to assist in space programming and the standardizing of equipment, materials, and plantings. The master plan would also help the public visualize the future of Patton Park and may also provide the tool to assist interested parties to potential fundraise, etc., for specific improvements. Patton Park continues to be a very popular attraction in Hamilton for year-round activities, and this plan will help ensure the future of the park as well as providing the plan for future enhancements. We have estimated the construction of some of the improvements at $200,000. However, that is an estimate at this time until the plan is completed. Thank you.
Is there a recommendation from the CPC?
Yes, the CPC unanimous supports this, as did the FinCom and the Select Board.
Any questions or discussion? If not, we can move to a vote. This requires a majority vote. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. The article passes, and I so declare. Article 2-13, Community Preservation, Community House, Centennial Square. I recognize Jay Butler.
I move that the town approve Article 2-13 as printed in the warrant. Mr. Moderator, could I ask you to recognize Steve Decatur, current board member and past president of the Community House?
I recognize Steve Decatur.
Thank you. I live over at 6 Horseshoe Lane, a longtime Hamilton resident and board member of the Community House. I believe we have a slide we wanted to project. First of all, I'd like to say a thank you to the Select Board, the Finance Committee, the CPC Committee, and fellow Hamilton residents for giving us a few brief minutes to discuss our exciting project. The Community House just celebrated our 100th anniversary in 2021. We were planning a big celebration last year, but due to COVID, that's been pushed out. And we've been working on this project for quite a while, which we call Centennial Square, which you can see up there. The community houses, most of you, if not all of you, have probably utilized that either yourselves or your family, your friends, your children, you maybe even hosted events there. It's really a place where everyone is welcome. We've connected our community through enrichment programming and special events, and our mission is to enrich through arts and events, promote togetherness and strengthen our community. We're a volunteer board. We have 21 board members from both Hamilton and Wenham. We have a terrific executive director, Melissa Elmer, and many staff and volunteers that help support us. The vision of the community house really is to enhance the quality of life for everyone who lives and works and plays on the North Shore. And I would really like to thank the Select Board, the Finance Committee, and the CPC for the unanimous recommendation to support this. This Centennial Square will be a commemorative outdoor gathering space with an expansive courtyard, benches, table seating for public use for all people and ages in the village. It's basically factored after the town square concept that you see in many cities. It's going to provide a space for community celebrations, entertainment, open-air markets. We've already started to have a few pop-up markets, like the farmers market, maybe you've seen that, and many other events, all of which align with our community house's mission to create opportunities for the connection and recreation. We saw what a great job the Patton Park playground, how that enhanced the community. We saw how we redid many years ago the swimming pool and everything, how that enhanced the committee. And similar to that, where this is such a prime location in the town, we really feel strongly that this is just going to enhance the viability and the vibrancy of the whole downtown area. The Hamilton Development Committee, which you just prior voted by consent to support their budget, we've been working very closely with Jan Suleman and her committee, and we're very excited to be able to work with our local businesses to come up with programs and events where they can utilize this space, which has accessible parking, high visibility, so we think it's going to be just a terrific partnership with the HDC to help our local businesses grow their businesses. In addition to the CPA funds that we're requesting, both from Hamilton and Wenham and the HDC, roughly half of the money is being raised privately. We have a program we put together called Pave the Way, which is giving folks opportunities to memorialize their family or loved ones with a brick or a paver, or we also have seats and tables and things of that sort. So we think it's just going to be a very handsome, high-quality addition to our community. It's really in keeping with the legacy of the design. The community house is in the National Historic Registration, so it's a very important building in the eyes of the nation as well. And we think our program that we put forth really is going to enhance everything. So with that, I thank you for your support. Thank you to the FinCom, the CPC, and the Select Board. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions or comments? We can move to a vote. This requires a majority vote. This is Community Preservation Community House Centennial Square funding. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. The article passes, and I so declare. Article 3-1, Climate Change Resolution. I recognize Darcy Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town approve Article 3-1 as printed in the warrant. Is there a second?
Second.
The article seeks to adopt a resolution. This is a non-binding resolution establishing certain goals relative to the reduction in the use of fossil fuels to achieve net zero carbon energy for the municipal and school operations by 2040. The article further seeks authorization to allow the Select Board to enter into any agreements memorializing the town's commitment to achieving these goals and any grant agreements to assist the town in this regard. I want to stress that this is a non-binding resolution. It is aspirational. It refers only to goals for the municipality. This does not affect private property, although we are hoping that citizens will step up and do their part, as even baby steps make a big difference. And I'm also going to be introducing the Hamilton Wenham Climate Action Team to answer any questions that the legislature might have. We have Bob Knowles from Wenham, who will speak. We also have from Hamilton, Greg Horner and Scott Regan. And are there any questions?
First, we'll hear from John McGrath for the FinCom.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As noted in the warrant, the FinCom is reporting that it voted unanimously approved this article. We discussed it at length earlier this week and put our support behind it. A couple of quick comments. The resolution actually has three themes to it. It's setting goals, which I'm sure you might hear from shortly. It also talks about collaborative and coordinated planning across a number of different organizations in town. Any decision-making would emanate from that planning process. And then secondly, it provides for support for energy efficiency and adoption of renewable energy strategies. So that's what's sort of in the resolution, but I'm happy to report that FinCom supports this.
Okay. Questions or discussion?
So I just have a couple comments here. Scott Regan, 22 Elliott Street in Hamilton, and I'm a member of the volunteer climate action team here in Hamilton. So adopting the proposed climate change resolution would create a net zero carbon goal for the town by 2024 or 2040, meaning that all energy consumed by municipal buildings and vehicles would either be generated by clean energy, such as solar or wind, and any remaining energy consumption generated by fossil fuels would be offset by renewable power or renewable energy credits. We recognize that this may be viewed as a lofty goal. However, it's our belief that we need to set the target now. As part of the resolution, a climate action committee would be formed and tasked with developing a climate action plan, which would detail the path forward towards carbon neutrality with support from the Massachusetts Department of Energy. The resolution details 4 primary strategies to achieve these goals. 1, energy conservation and efficiency, meaning reduce municipal energy consumption by implementing low-cost, no-cost energy conservation measures. Number 2, replace fossil fuels with non-carbon energy as a source of electricity, essentially meaning generate power from renewable energy. Number 3, electrify all municipal buildings and vehicles, effectively meaning replacing old boilers and furnaces with high-efficient electric heat pumps, and take advantage of the improving technology for batteries to electrify the municipal fleet of vehicles. 4th, reduce the amount of waste produced by further promoting composting, as well as the reduction of plastic use in the town. So in closing, we're here to remind you that Hamilton was actually designated as a green community 12 years ago, and we are asking for your support in this long-term initiative to ensure that Hamilton remains its leading role in the state's climate action initiatives. Thanks.
Discussion or questions? Please identify yourself.
Virginia Cookson, 318 Water Street. I have a couple of problems with the way this is set up, and because you have a committee that's from 2 different towns, and it's already, according to the way I read this, the committee, Hamilton Wyndham Climate Action Team is already put together. Generally speaking, the initiatives for creating a committee, it's by appointment, not by people just getting together and coming to the town, but it shows initiative, so that's great. But I would think that you would want the committee to be consisting of only Hamilton residents, because they're asking for the commission, for the select board, to be allowed to take, enter into agreements with the Mass Department of Resources, Environmental Resources, as well as other entities that. And I have a problem with that because the state is where the money would come from, and the state very often attaches conditions to their money. I'm sure everybody up here in front is much more aware of that than I am. They like to give you money for a year or 2 or something, and then they want you to continue. That would bother me a lot if there was any contention, and I'm not pronouncing that correctly, I apologize, coming from the state, that then would put the town under an obligation. I'm all for reducing carbon footprint. Everything that you said, I happen to agree with. I may not like the process, but, you know, the end result I definitely would like to see. But I don't want to see the town be put under an obligation. And I also think I think people in town, and maybe not just this town, may want to speak up, but they're afraid to. I'm afraid to speak up because people think I'm anti-environment. So I've been on the Conservation Commission for a while, so hopefully that says something about what I think about the environment. But I just want us to be very careful with this and not just get caught in it and then be, I guess I'm afraid that if the town is obligated, it might be aiming at the individual people, the residents. Then will get, I don't like to use the word, but hooked into it. So I have concerns, a lot of concerns. Thank you for listening.
Further discussion?
Can I just reply? So a couple of comments on that one. Thank you for your comments. One, this microphone is far too short for me. So this is trouble now. So one, the climate action team right now is simply a group of volunteers. We have no formal affiliation with the town in any way. And there's 5 of us who have been working together on this resolution, and that's it, right? As part of the resolution, we propose that a climate action formal committee would be created, which would have representatives from the select board, the school committee, and the town, as well as our team. So just to clarify that for you. Number 2, to our point and Darcy's point, this is not a legally binding document. It's simply a goal. And so, any concerns around like being hooked to do something, I get, but just remember, it's a goal. It's a starting point. There certainly will be a lot to figure out along the way, but in our opinion, we have to start somewhere, and the time is right now. And the reason why Wenham is also included in this is because, one, the school department is regional, and if you look at energy consumption amongst the Hamilton municipality, Wenham municipality, as well as the school department numbers for consumption are far and away higher. And so we believe that it's important to include them as part of this. Additionally, funding from state agencies such as MAPC prioritize regional groups rather than individual municipalities. So if we were to go into it with Wenham, as well as the school department, then they'd see us as a regional committee, if you will, and place us higher on the list for funding. And fourth, that funding that you talked about, the funding that we would receive, or we could receive, or be potentially receiving from the state, would go towards energy efficiency projects to further these goals. And that's the way we understand it from the state. I hope they wouldn't slip anything else in there that we weren't aware of, but as far as we're concerned, all the funding we receive from the state would go towards projects that would bring down energy costs, improve ventilation in buildings, and things like that. So, good questions, thank you. Thank you.
I would like to make one comment here. First of all, I would like to say thank you for standing up and pointing out potential problems. That's something that we all need to do, because sometimes we get intimidated by being in a large group, and that's really brave of you, and I appreciate it. The same question you had about financially burdening the town was one of the first things that we looked at as it gave us pause as a finance committee. We said, what is this going to cost us, and what's going to the impact on us? And as we walked ourselves through it, we realized that we have control of that. And your point about having strings attached to financial grants that might come from the state government, where we may be required to make continuous payments in the future, we're very conscious of that. We do that, we look at that when we have hiring new people. We realize that that's an ongoing expense for us, not just a one-time budget change. And so you'll find that the Finance Committee is very concerned about those things, and we will continue to look at that as we move forward. But overall, we see the general direction as correct, and that's why we're supporting it.
Yes, I recognize this gentleman on the...
Chris Fellows, 184 Woodland Mead. Could you take a minute, give us a little bit about behind the scenes with a concrete example? Say we adopt this resolution, and the police department wants to buy a new SUV. What would the behind the scenes be? What would factor into the purchase of an energy efficient vehicle, let's say a hybrid SUV versus a traditional? And maybe that is outside the.
Well, in general, it would follow the normal process, but this would give us a reason to say, is there an option or opportunity here to use an electric vehicle for that an electrical vehicle to replace that vehicle instead? We need to establish the infrastructure. We need to have charging stations. We need to have a little bit better understanding about how those vehicles run. Ultimately, the town may want to go in a direction to have electric vehicles in the public works department as well, throughout and on all of the departments. We need to go through the normal, regular process with the capital committee. So the request for new vehicles gets initiated at the department level. It goes through the capital committee. They prioritize things, and then that comes back to the town manager, who brings it to the finance committee. They make their recommendations, and then it ultimately winds up before town meeting. So at every step along the way, we'd be looking at, is this an opportunity to advance our climate goals? How much does that cost us? And that would be a part of the deliberations at every step.
Great, thank you.
And a great question too. I mean, we did vote for a new police vehicle on this warrant, and we did ask that exact question: should we go and buy a hybrid vehicle? And we looked at it. The department currently does have a hybrid vehicle, but it's been the one in the shop the most and off the roads the most days. So we decided that it was not the right investment in the town right now until there's further development of those vehicles. But we do ask those questions. We're doing that currently, but I think it's a great point to bring up because it's something that we're already thinking about.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Hi, excuse me, Al DeGroot, 193 Chabaco Road in Kingston. And first of all, kudos to the concepts, to Darcy, and to the group who are promoting this. It is, in my beliefs, our moral obligation to take this climate change and carbon footprint issues incredibly seriously for future generations. This is not just putting a Band-Aid on or saying we're doing the right thing here in Hamilton, Wenham. It's a moral obligation that we all have to take very seriously, in my opinion. The one place that I think isn't addressed in this that I'm curious about is the conservation of greenlands, of open space, of forests, and the importance of the natural surroundings in the environmental future that we all have to take care of for our children and future generations. So I just wonder if that's something that has been thought about being addressed or added to this, or if this is just about the carbon footprint that we're creating as opposed to the protection of the environment.
It's Bob Knowles, 201 Main Street, Wenham. Raise your hand if you're from Wenham. I think I'm outnumbered. So I can answer that. I've been in the solar development industry for 12 years now. Renewable Energy Massachusetts, LLC. My partner and I have been developing solar farms, large-scale solar, utility-scale solar projects for a long time, over 50 megawatts in 9 different municipalities across the Commonwealth, all under the DOER's incentives, as well as federal incentives, the investment tax credit. I wouldn't be standing here telling you about my last 12 years if there weren't state and federal incentives that allow me to make a living doing this. So you need both. But to answer your great question, sir, I would say that when we, not to get too far into the weeds here, but when we cite a solar project, we have to go through a town permitting process. There's also zoning restrictions for large-scale solar projects, and I'm just speaking from my own background doing utility-scale solar developments. We can only get permits if and it's a public process just like this. People show up. If they don't like where we're going to put the solar farm, and the planning board votes us not in favor, we move on. We don't appeal, we move on. So there is a public process to what I do in large-scale solar. So in that regard, we are preserving open space. The DOER and green fields, in fact, the DOER has been steering us away from green fields across the Commonwealth because they recognize that we need to preserve those open lands, those beautiful lands across the state. So there's an appropriate place to put solar, and there's a non-appropriate place to put solar. We're trying to do the right thing, so we're really looking at industrial, commercial type sites. So I hope partly that answered your question.
Just a quick point of clarification. The article before you is asking if the town should adopt a non-binding resolution, and if you vote yes, you'll basically be authorizing the select board to negotiate with the climate action team to develop that resolution. That's why you don't actually have the language of the resolution in front of you. The proponents have made some recommendations of things that might be in that resolution. It's not all-encompassing. Items about zoning and about how things get developed, this could be introduced into that conversation between the select board and the climate action team at a later date, and it'll be a public process. So again, it's not meant for this conversation to take up all the things that might happen under climate change, but just to introduce the article to the town and get us started moving in that direction.
One quick addition to that, Greg Corner, 28 Home Street in Hamilton. A lot of these decisions, some of the questions about what will be and what won't be included will be taken up by the committee that we're asking to be formed. So I think a lot of these questions just get pushed forward onto that group.
Great Clark, 823 Bear Road, right next door. I just want to say to you that we are already on board. You've already started doing your part by putting all your compost into separate bins and not taking it out of the global warming. And this is 1/4 of this plan. So I just urge you to go on and keep doing the right thing. We're ahead of the game. And I congratulate you, and I hope you'll support this item.
Hi, Deb Safford, 46 Maple Street. I just had a question that it's a non-binding resolution, and yet it's establishing goals that we're going to be committing to doing. And there's no tax impact right now, but there's clearly going to be a tax impact in the future. So we're basically attaching our cart to an entity that wants to be created that's going to be driving tax changes in the future. And so to say yes on this, because it's an exploratory thing, it's really connecting you to an entity that's going to be increasing taxes, right? Because if we change things out, we just changed over our system, from one fuel to another fuel, it was very expensive. So when you're replacing municipal buildings, when you're buying new cars, now we have to do the infrastructure, the charging stations. Those things all cost money. I mean, electricity isn't free, right? I mean, it all comes from somewhere. And the batteries have to be, when they fail, they have to go somewhere. So there is a whole cost of ownership that I think needs to really be understood, and I want to know, what is that process? If we approve this resolution, which empowers these people to, work with you guys to create these goals that are their goals, do we as a community vote on the goals? Do we, where is that, and what is the consequence going to be? Are we going to have another 2% conservation tax? Where then it creates a slush fund to allow these things to be made. I just think that there is a tax impact always. There's always a law of unintended consequences. So before we start creating new organizations and bodies that we're going to be responsible to addressing, I just want to make sure that that's what the thinking is on that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent question, and I know it's one that the Finance Committee wrestled with extensively the last couple of weeks. Just as with everything we do in the town, when we want to spend money, we go through the process. The select board, on the recommendation, the town manager puts forward a request, it gets vetted by the Finance Advisory Commission, and then it comes to your town meeting, and you make the final decision on it. This is just the first step in a process and a journey. The goals that are outlined in the warrant article may not be the final goals that get set in the actual resolution when it gets agreed to. There's many, many steps, but it's important to take the first step, right? I would tell you that as long as I'm the town manager, we would always be looking at both the effort to reach the goal, but also what is the other long-term cost that might be associated with anything. We need to decide how we want to move forward with addressing climate change locally, but that doesn't mean that just because something gets recommended by the Climate Action Committee to the Select Board, that it's ultimately going to be implemented into the budget. It will be going through a multi-step process to be vetted, make sure it's the right decision at the time.
Mr. Moderator, I request that you move the motion.
Can I make one quick, please, final comment?
No.
No, we've heard enough.
This gentleman was at the microphone.
I'll keep it to 30 seconds or less. We all have to do our part, folks, and we have to start now. If we wait a whole lot longer, it's not going to be a whole lot of fun. There is a transition period between now and 2040, 2050. Yes, it's going to be painful at times. I completely agree. I will feel the pain. You all will feel some pain. We all have to do our part. Similar to resolutions warrant articles we've been passing in here with tax increases, you know, the town, and then I'll stop, I promise. 12 years ago, the town raised grants worth $1.7 million from the Department of Energy Resources. There are lots of grants available that will have no impact on the citizens of Hamilton. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Please let the gentleman speak and don't be. Okay, there's been a motion to call a question, which is non-debatable. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, let's go to the clickers. Okay, this is a motion to essentially terminate debate. If you're in favor of terminating debate, vote yes. If not, nay. Voting opens now. If you vote yes, you're voting to terminate debate. Closing the vote?
Mr. Moderator, I have to set up for the voting.
I'm sorry, okay, let's, well, that's, the voice, I was unclear on the voice vote, so, okay, we'll go to the voter card. Everyone got a yellow card. If you are in favor, yellow card, if you are in favor of terminating debate on Article 3-1, please raise your hand. Okay. This is a majority vote. Okay, you can put them down, please. If you're opposed to terminating debate, please raise your hands. Okay. The motion to terminate debate passes, and I so declare. We'll now go to a vote on the main motion, which is Article 3-1, Climate Change Resolution. Voting is, this is a majority vote. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. The article passes, and I so declare. I recognize Joe Demilowitz.
All right, thank you, everybody. I'll be really brief here. I just wanted to call all of your attention while I have a captive audience to the fact that April is Autism Awareness Month. This month, some great programming between the Hamilton Police Department and the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District is out there to help raise awareness about autism awareness. And one of those things is that on April 26th, I believe it is, the police department is partnering with Five Sons Pizzeria. A percentage of everything you order on that day after a certain time will be gifted to the school district to help with special education programs. So take advantage and order yourself a pizza or a calzone or a salad or something on that night, and you might even have it delivered to you by a Hamilton Police Department. So, yeah, when you order, you have to mention Autism Awareness Month. So make sure that they know that you're ordering for that reason. Right? Let's help out. April 26th.
Okay, we've completed our warrant. Is there a motion to dissolve? Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.